doing it. Then we'll try to progress to just visual seeing without the intervention of language. So we have progressed from language to just thought form, that is just visual seeing. And from there we will try to let the statue blend into the Akash Tattva around. So we are looking at something, but there is no object to look at now. There's just the act of looking. And objects in Sanskrit are called as artha. The Vishay, the object, is called as artha. Artha comes from the root re, to enjoy. To enjoy. So whether it was the physical statue, whether it was the mental statue, it was there for our enjoyment. So the first will be, we'll free of verbal. Second, we'll blend the picture into the emptiness. What will remain is the enjoyment we had of the picture, right? The enjoyment we had when we used the picture, the statue. And then we'll ask ourselves a question: whom is this enjoyment coming to? Who is enjoying? And there'll be a sensation of I enjoying. And then we'll try to dissolve even the enjoyment and just the I remains, right? And then we'll close our meditation with even the feeling of I gets absorbed into the universal, what do you call, emptiness around, right? So we'll try to do this. It's a little difficult meditation, but if we can practice this at home for a few months to 1 year, our very perception of the world around us will change. We will be able to see everything in 4 stages, right? One is the knowledge we have through words. The second is before words are created in the mind. The word has a kind of form, which is called as thought form, right? And that thought form is a picture, but many times it could be not just a picture. It could be a kind of symbol. So it is a symbol. It is an area of symbolism plus picture. Thank you. So when we move deep into meditation and we leave the world of verbal thought, we leave the world of language, and in deeper meditation we are able to see what was there in the mind before words covered it, before it became a thought. And those were thought forms. Tawariya Sahib says we create 120 of these thought forms every second. Right? That is, every second we are creating 120 thought forms in the mind. And they travel across the upper layer of the brain, and they come to this forehead, which is the computer screen of the mind. The brain being the computer and the screen being of the computer being the forehead. He calls this forehead as the IESM centers. IESM, intellectual, emotional, sex and moving. So he says those thought forms travel over here and they register over there. And they, out of those thought forms, some are registered and some are non-registered. In my understanding of his science, this is a place where sometimes I feel a little bit of cloudiness, where he has not particularly mentioned whether all 120 are registered or not registered. Now, those thought forms which get registered, they create verbal thought. So, verbal thought is thought which is in language. When we are chattering inside, it is always in language. So now we want to go to a deeper state inside. What was in our mind before the, what do you call, it took the form of language? And that is thought form. And those registered, they are now quoted in language, and that is the thought which we have. About 16 are registered, and out of that we may be every second aware of one or two thoughts. The rest just float away. But it's a very deep science, what he's talking about. And that is what we call as verbal thought. Verbal thought. Now, before the thought form is created in the mind, and the thought form is created over here at the medulla oblongata. He calls the medulla as the thalamus. Thalamus, right? And sorry, not the thalamus. Just losing it. One minute. He calls the medulla as taluka. Right. So he calls the medulla as taluka. And later on he's going to teach us, when we go very deep into his, what do you call, science, and understand what he's trying to say. So he's going to teach us how to close that taluka and how to open that taluka. It is like a valve, right? So from here the thought form is created, but before it is created, something has to come from outside. And this he calls as an impulse, that which comes from outside. In the old Shastra language of the scriptures, this electromagnetic impulse which comes in through the five senses was called as a tanmatra. And that tanmatra, so let us just try to see what his science is saying and where we are when we are looking at the statue. I hope you are all interested in this, right? Now, when we see an object outside, the mind divides itself into two parts. And the mind which we have is what Tawariya Sahib calls the universal mind. The universal mind we've talked about, I think, yesterday or day before. It is the plasticine through which the universe was made. And that universal mind, it flows through the five senses every moment, and it gets conditioned by our memory and patterns and habits, and what is lying inside. And it no longer remains universal mind, it becomes individual mind. Individual mind. We can take the example of some people looking at the tree, and the tree is registered on the same neuron in the brain, right? But a carpenter looking at the tree will look through his mind, individual mind. He'll say, the wood is of good quality. A poet looking at the tree, the same impression will be registered on the same neuron in the brain. There's no difference over there. But he'll look at the beauty and how the branches are trying to reach the sky and talk with God, etc. Right? So, if a gardener is looking at the tree, then he will say the tree needs a little bit of fertilizer or whatever. So each one is looking at the world outside. But what we see inside is conditioned by our inner conditionings of sanskars. So what comes out from outside is a huge, what you call, collage of impulses, and from that we make an impression. From that we make an impression which is registered here in the forebrain. And that impression which we make is out of our memory pattern. So when the mind looks at an object, the mind is divided into two parts: the seeing part and the seen part. The seeing part and the seen part. The seen part, which Tawariya Sahib calls as manas, the manas. It goes out from the five senses, and I'm looking at her, so my attention is on her. So the seen part, that is that part of the mind which is going to create the picture inside, it goes out and takes her shape. So in Yoga Sutra we have a sutra, Vritti Sarupyam Itaratra. Sarupyam means to take the shape. So it takes the shape of her and it breaks her down into what is called as electromagnetic impulses, which the Shastras call as tanmatra. Now that day we did that slok from the Gita where Krishna is saying matra sparshas. What is coming in is not her picture. It is the, what do you call, it is all these electromagnetic impulses. We live under the illusion that we are seeing her picture. Can you understand this? Am I coming across with this? Right? Am I coming across? Now, those electromagnetic impulses flow in, they come to the taluka over here, they ride up the backbone. I don't know, are you interested in going deeper into this science? Then we'll go a little deeper, otherwise I'll... Huh? He's saying no. Huh? In the Yoga Sutra, there is one sutra. Prakash Kriya Sthiti Bhut Indriya Atmakam Bhoga Apvargam Artham Drashyam. That picture which you're seeing outside, Drashyam, the picture which you're seeing outside, is composed of the three gunas, Prakash Kriya Sthiti, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, Prakash Kriya Sthiti, and the five elements, Bhut, Panch Mahabhut. Bhut Indriya Atmakam. So that which I, the Atmakam, the seeing outside, is Bhoga Apvarga Artham Drashyam. It can be used for indulgence or it can be used to rise in consciousness. Indulgence being bhog, or to rise in conscious means upward. So that which is coming from outside is composed of the 5 elements. It is composed of the 5 elements. And he says 30,000 of these impulses, tanmatras, are flowing into the body-brain system every second. Every second. This is very difficult because you're not going to find this in any book unless you read his 2 books, The Purpose of Birth and Death and the Yoga Sutra. Right? But this is something which he can see and we cannot see. So he has just, when you read The Purpose of Birth and Death, it is, I think there is no book like that in the world, because Rishi means the one who can see. So he's looking at something as if he's looking at a TV screen and he's noting down what is written, right? And when you read the book, you can see it is not something which he has gathered from everywhere. It is something he's looking at it and writing it down at the same time, right? Looking is Vyas and writing is Ganesh. Looking is Vyas and writing is Ganesh, right? So these impulses are coming in, and what are they composed of? The 5 elements. And they're coming in as electromagnetic impulses. And somebody has to decode them. Somebody has to decode them. So the manas goes out, takes the shape of the, what do you call, the Vishaya outside or the Artha outside, breaks it down into electromagnetic impulses. These flow in through the 5 senses and they travel up the backbone. When they travel up the backbone, the picture which was outside has to be decoded. And the picture which is recreated on the screen of the mind, chitta, right? The picture which has to be an exact duplicate of the outside picture, right? So in yoga, this is called as Sthul Earth and Sukshma Earth. So one picture is outside, which I'm looking at her, Sthul Earth, and she is recreated inside as a Vritti, right? And that is Sukshma Earth. So these patterns are traveling up, and we have what is called the 5 chakras. The 5 chakras are like a laboratory. She's sitting on the ground, so those electromagnetic impulses connected with Prithvi Tattva will be decoded by which chakra? Muladhara chakra. Can you understand? The Muladhara chakra has the responsibility of decoding the electromagnetic impulses connected with the earth element. Please understand, when we say earth element does not mean the ground she is sitting on, right? If you are in depression, I come to your home and give you a little support, it is also the earth element. So the earth element stretches from the very physical earth right up to the most subtle psychological element we can consider as earth. And it will have so many properties. The property of cohesiveness, the property of resistance. Can you see? The property of being opaque, that is veiling something. So all these properties will be decoded in certain ratios, and those ratios are what? Prakash Kriya Sthiti. Prakash Kriya Sthiti. And they'll be sent to the next chakra, right? And there the Swadhisthana chakra will decode the water element inside of her. So now the water element is very interesting in the sense that I may say she's looking a little dull today. You're not looking dull. Hmm. And why am I saying she's... So I feel that she's lacking some emotion over here. So the emotional ratio is the water element. Water is the emotion of the earth. Water is the prana of the earth. And that is why Mr. Tawaria was very against building of dams, because you're blocking the prana of the earth, the huge dams, right? And actually they are not necessary. Series of small dams can always work better than these huge dams. These huge dams are misplacing the axis of the earth. Their magnetic fields are destroying the magnetic fields of the earth, right? But there can be no corruption in small dams. You need a big dam, right? So the emotional ratio will be uh, decoded by this Swadhisthana chakra, right? Uh, then it will go to the Manipur chakra, and the fire element will be decoded. Fire element means what I'm looking at, right? So the fire element will be decoded there. What is the kind of picture, etc. And then it will go up to the Anahat chakra, where the wind element will be decoded. And then finally it will go to the, Vishuddhi chakra. And there what will be decoded is the Akash Tattva, right? Akash Tattva. So after looking at her picture in the mind, I may say that she's a very angry person. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? The Manipura chakra has decoded a certain ratio of fire element, and it is presenting all this to the ego inside. Can you understand? Right? So these 5 chakras are 5 technicians in a laboratory, and each moment they are decoding the ratio of elements in the impulses which are coming from outside. Thank you. Now, once they come up there, then we have an inner instrument in the mind. And here we have seen that the mind has divided itself into 2 parts, the seeing part and the seen part. So all this will come up, and it will, in the mind, it will recreate her picture, and their memory will come to meet it. The memory patterns come from a certain area in the brain, which Tauriya Sahib calls as brain 3B. He's divided the brain into so many parts. And the memory pattern will come to meet the impulse. It will decode the impulse through memory. What the chakras have done, they've not really decoded. They've analyzed and given it to this thing. The decoding is done through the ego and memory, right? Then thought forms are created. So out of those 30,000 impulses which came in, 120 thought forms are created at the taluka. And they run across the top of the brain, and they come to this area, the registration area, where we register them as thoughts. We register them as thoughts. And that registration is done in language. The thought form created here was devoid of language. Is this clear now? Now, the impulse coming in, of course, is traveling at electronic speeds, tremendous speeds. Very difficult for us to even bring our consciousness to that level where we can. So, our consciousness can, if it's possible, if we can bring consciousness to the taluka and not allow that memory pattern which has come to meet the impulse. Not allow the memory pattern which has come to meet the impulse. And this meeting is no ordinary meeting. By the time the impulse has come here, all these 5 laboratories have done their thing, right? And there is a certain ratio in the impulse of tamas, rajas and sattva. Only that memory which matches that ratio can come to meet it. Right? And I'll say, okay, she's looking fresh in the morning, she's this, that, etc., whatever. Right? So that picture is what you call recreated, but we can reach a state in our meditation as we go deeper where we are able to pause the meeting of memory to the impulse. Pause the meeting of memory to the impulse. What will happen then? What will happen then? Thank you. See, I'm looking at the tree. It is when memory comes in that what comes in? Individual mind. Till then it is pure universal mind. Can you understand? So, what I am looking at is that by the time the memory has hit there, something has come from outside which is pure. Yeah. And it is something of a very high state of electronic prana. And I'm conditioning it by my memory and making a thought form. Is this clear? At that moment, if I can pause the memory, but for that, we have to practice till we reach that state of consciousness where we can pause the memory. So the memory cannot color what comes from outside. Then the pure impulses come from outside. He says, and that is why we are doing the prism exercise. Please understand the importance of the prism exercise. All what I'm talking about is in the prism exercise. What we are going to do with the statue also just now is also just a byproduct of the prism exercise. How many of you have seen the movie Umrao Jan? You know, when the Umrao Jan goes to the village of her, where she was born, and then all the mukhyas of the village and all come and say, will you talk to the village people? You're so famous, you're in Lucknow and all that. So she says, okay, I will talk, I'll do this. But he says, इसके साथ थोड़ा मुजरा भी हो जाए. Okay, वो मेरी आदत है, थोड़ी मुजरा भी हो जाए. Right? Without that, there's no sustaining me. The life force does not sustain me. This morning, everybody told me, you're not supposed to talk one word. Over there, go and do the meditation. You're not supposed to talk one word. But it's थोड़ा मुजरा भी हो जाए. So now what happens over here is, if we can come to a point where we are able to stop these impulses, pause these impulses, and please understand that the mind which goes out to meet the, what you call, picture outside or the Vishay outside, it is molecular in nature. Molecular in nature. In the sense that anything molecular can take the shape of, you put water in a glass, it takes the shape of the glass, right? So water is molecular. Similarly, the mind which has gone outside, it has taken the shape, right? But when it is coming in, it is coming in carrying electronic matter, which is the impulses. The impulses. Why does this molecular quality of the mind make it possible to pause? Can anyone say? See, this is the secret of all meditation. If this was not a quality of the mind, you cannot meditate. You cannot meditate. See, if the water takes the shape of the glass, I can dam the water. I won't allow the water to go into the glass. Right? Now, because that the what do you call, the Maruti service, the carrying agent of those impulses, right, is molecular in nature. The impulses are electronic in nature, right? But because the carrying agent, which is called as manas, is molecular, I can dam the manas because it is coming in at a fast speed of flowing water. Right? The river of the mind, the river of the impulses coming in, is coming at that supersonic speed, right? And if I can dam it at that moment, then I'm not allowing the impulse to beat the memory pattern, And then a thought cannot be created. Because the thought is the individual mind. The impression which is coming in is the universal mind. So because of this quality of the mind, I can dam the thing. I hold it through my meditation, through my will, through my sankalp shakti. I hold it over there. And when that happens, and if it can happen, Tawriya Sahib says, for only 1 second. For only 1 second. That is, if you can be in a meditative state for 1 second, this he calls as dharana. And then the thought forms which are created don't go from here, right? Now, here there is a step down transformer. There's a step down transformer. In the sense that 30,000 impulses are coming in, which is matter at electronic speed. But the manas can only make 120 thoughts. 120 thoughts. So by the time it comes over here, there's a big slowing down in the speed. And if we can hold that for 1 second, then instead of thought forms going up over here, because those thought forms were created through memory, right? A new doorway is opened over here in the central brain cavity of the Brahmarandra, right? This doorway is opened over here, and those impulses now flow through there. Are you drawing all this or not drawing all? Very nice. Huh? You got an assistant here. You should be drawing stereophonic here. So those impulses, they open a new doorway into the central brain cavity, which is called the Brahmarandra. And the first portion of the brain they meet, the first portion of the brain they meet is what is called, Gurdjieff calls, Patanjali calls us Ashay. Ashay means where all the memory patterns are lying. Hmm? Now, that part of the brain which is storing memory patterns, it those cells which make up that part of the brain, they have a they have to have a certain capacity. Otherwise, they cannot store memory patterns. Can you understand what I'm saying? So that part of the brain only opens to meet an impulse, right? There is again a one-way valve over here, like we have at Taluka, right? And it only opens to meet that impulse of her which is coming from outside. Now, so those, but when we are in a dream at night, and not the ordinary dreams of the beginning of the night, but the very powerful dreams which come early in the morning. When we are in those dreams, it is this valve has stopped working and all the patterns come out in different forms in dream symbology to meet us. In dream symbology to meet us. Can you see how a thought form is created through that symbology? Through the symbology. So suddenly we have entered into the time and space which makes up a dream. Now, dream time is very different from our time. Of course, the way of creation of dream time, man has mastered it, right? And we enjoy it in movies, we enjoy it in movies, right, which we see. If you We used to see Hindi movies in college and school and all that. I used to see Hindi movies, and you had this, that time Amitabh Bachchan was the rage, right? And every movie of Amitabh Bachchan, there would be a small Amitabh Bachchan, and the police would be running behind him, right? And suddenly Amitabh Bachchan would be 20 years old and coming and running in towards you on the screen, and the police are still running behind him. Right? So, how is dream time created? How is dream time created? So, the director of the movie, he takes this small Amitabh Bachchan, and then he gives you a scene of a large Amitabh Bachchan, right? And we live those in between 20 years ourselves. Our mind sort of fills in the, what do you call, gaps ourselves. I mean, all of you all have seen this. No? All of you have seen in a movie. It's there. You should go and see those movies. So, the cells in that part of the brain, they have the capacity to, what you call, take a minimum and make a maximum. Right? So, supposing, say, I'm now nearing 70, right? So, she'll come and ask me, can you tell me something about your life? So, what will I say? I'll tell her about certain milestones in my life. But out of those certain milestones, I will weave a picture of what do you call 70 years. Am I coming across this, right? So the uh, cells in those, through certain milestones, they can make a picture of 60 years, 70 years, right? In a couple of seconds. In a couple of seconds. So, in the dream, we can live karma of many lives in maybe few minutes. We can be free of karma of many lives because it is these cells which have the capacity. So once the impulse breaks this doorway, and for that you have to pause in meditation for 1 second. 1 second. Not so difficult, I suppose. Right? Okay. See, this is the same thing. I'm still looking at her only. But where memory comes, the process is different and the outcome is different. Where memory does not come is not, where memory does not condition the universal mind, the process is different and the outcome is different. So those cells will have a capacity to grasp a whole lifetime in say 3 minutes. In say 3 minutes. Right? Now, try to understand this. That is, 70 years equals to 3 minutes. 70 years equals to 3 minutes. So, he may ask, what do you know about her? Do you know anything about her? So, I met her a couple of times. How in those few times I wouldn't really know much about her. I can tell you this, that she's a very nice girl and this and that and all that, right? But really I don't know anything about her. But supposing I look at her, say for a minute, then how does it work out in that brain? How does it work out in that brain? I see her as if I've known her for 30 years. Now if he asks me that, do you know her? Of course, for 30 years I know her. So I can tell you this about her. So the capacity of the processing power of the brain, right? When we are here, what you call, when the thought has come here, out of those, what do you call, 120 forms, that 120 forms, right? It could only process 16. It could only process 16. Yeah. And this is the speed at which impulses travel in the brain, 1 upon 16th of a second. 1 upon 16th of a second. Now, suddenly your processing power increases. You look at a book, you understand it. You look at a person, you understand it. And you may just see the book for a minute, but you understood as if you read it for 30 years. Right? And that processing power of that area of the brain. And so those impulses which are coming in, now they are taking a different meaning. They've not yet reached the screen of the computer. They've not come to the ISM centers outside. That would come like this. This will come through like this. Now, Tawaria Sahib says that if, as we practice this, from 1 second we can reach 10 seconds. So, 10 seconds, 1 second is how many thoughts? 120. But 10 seconds is 1200 thoughts. It's not just opening of the door, it's become like a tidal wave inside. It becomes like a tidal wave inside. So it will pass through a deeper area of the brain, which he calls as universal divine mind. Universal divine mind. And universal divine mind is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. And suddenly your understanding goes to a different quality when universal divine mind opens up. It is as if you have the capacity to understand a person not just in 20 years, but like Mr. Tavaria used to say, in my past life I swallowed a color TV, and when I look at a person, I see 200 previous lifetimes and 200 forward lifetimes. So the capacity to see person, to understand something, to understand in a concept of unity, purnata. And he calls this as 1 second as dharana, 10 seconds as dhyana. Dhyana. Right? So you open the second part of the brain, right? And you're in communication with the universal divine mind. Now many things will start changing over here. Many things. Somebody just day before yesterday was asking me, what is our ichha and his ichha? Means his will and my will. His desire and my desire. So here there is no place for what do you call personal desire. It is the universal mind has its own desire. It has its own understanding of each situation. It has its own telling of you what is right in it, each situation. Right? And so that universal mind opens up and there's communication with the universal mind. Now, see here, perception changes. In the sense that I'm very angry with her, and I blow up at her like this, I throw out all nonsense and I call her everything. But at a subtle level, if I had the eyes to see that in my body-brain system, that anger, because I can't get angry on her, I'm getting angry on myself only, right? Nobody can get angry on anyone else, right? So, what that anger at the level of the cells, at the level of the nadis, at the level of the prana, if I could see that the destruction of that one anger is more than the atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, would I ever get angry again? Am I coming across? I will never get angry again. It's not possible. It is because we don't see what comes out of our anger that we get angry. And this goes for all negative emotions. Now here we talked about karma. That every thought, every feeling that I get is constantly banging against universal mind and coming back to me. So my anger is banging against universal mind and coming back to me. And suddenly I see not only am I destroying so much by having this anger just now, but when that anger bangs with universal mind and comes back to me, what it is going to bring, that also I can see, because now I'm living in universal mind. Am I understanding this? Right? So, in that very moment, all our thinking, everything will change. Everything will change. We will put all our personal desires on the side. We will put all our personal, and we'll just, what the mind of God, universal mind, what does it want to, what role am I playing for it? What role am I playing for it? So there we get into communication with universal mind. Then Mr. Tawaria says that if you can stop the thoughts for 100 seconds, right? And he calls this as samadhi. Samadhi. And in that moment when you stop the thoughts for 100 seconds, you jump one more boundary into an even deeper part of the mind, deeper part of the brain, and he calls us as the divine center. It is where the Atma is, the divine fragment is. It is his field. He has a kind of, electromagnetic field. Now, Patanjali has a sutra for this. Tatra nir atishayam sarvagnatva jnanam. Nir means beyond, excellence. Ati means already beyond. So Patanjali is using a double superlative over here. Nir ati shayam, sleeping there. Beyond excellence, sleeping there is the seed of all knowledge. Sarvagnatva bijam. Sarvagnatva bijam is the seed of all knowledge. Now what comes over here? Now we're in direct communication with the inner divine. Direct communication with the inner divine. And he says, what is that communication? The seed, bijam, of knowing, sarvagnatva, expands into infinity, sarva. Gna to know, sarva. Expands into infinity. And there are two sides to life. The divine side, Purush, the mirror, Prakriti. And suddenly there is knowledge of the Purush inside. It is from him that all this was created. Right? So, now what used to happen? She would meet me. The impulse would come in, to meet memory, come around here, and I would see on my computer screen, Dhwani has come, this, that, I have to talk to her. Now, the memory didn't, click. It went into the original storehouse of memory. Then it goes past memory, because the storehouse and memory are two sides of the brain this way. It bypasses that. Gets knowledge from the universal mind, gets knowledge from the divine center, and comes again to the screen and say, hello, what are you doing this morning? The reaction in both may look absolutely the same. But in one place, there is action with memory, and in the other place, there is pure action of the universal mind. Krishnamurti used to call this as right action, but he never explained what it was. Right? Can you see? So, these are the stages with which we want to go through when we are doing the prism exercise. Right? So, what we are going to do is we're going to look at the statue. And we are going to, for some time, allow the words of the statue to come. Then we'll pause the words. And then we'll, try to just see the colors and the blending of the statue, bring in the energy of sensitivity, right? and slowly we'll allow the statue to disappear into emptiness. And then we'll have that feeling that we were enjoying the statue. We'll drop that feeling, and then we'll drop even the feeling of I, right? Something is looking and something is seeing, but it is now there is no, we are not making any concept out of it, because out of a concept, the thought of the statue is born. First, the concept comes in the mind, right? So we'll at least be able to reach that level where the mind divides itself into two, right? Now, just another look at the word vritti, another look from another angle, because you can take that word from many angles. So the word vritti in English, one of the English translations of the word is modification. Modification. Universal mind is whole. There are no parts in universal mind. But when I look at her, my mind is dividing itself into two parts, which is not a natural quality of the universal mind, right? So when I'm looking at her, there is the seeing part and the seen part. And because it is not a natural quality of the universal mind has to adapt itself, to modify itself, to allow me to see her. So at the highest level, because we'll take different meaning when we go into the Yoga Sutra, at every level the meaning of vritti will change. But at the highest level, this is the meaning of the word modification, vritti, that the universal mind allows its original nature to change, to become individual mind. I am the seeing mind and she is the seen mind, right? And so we can call that as vritti. We can call the picture created on the mind is also a modification. We can create that, say that is also vritti. And chitta means attention, but chitta also means memory. Chitta also means memory. So you try to see that when I call her by her name, Dhvani, right? What do you call? Memory has got identified with attention. Can you understand? Which is not her name. Who she is, I don't know. But if I was sitting in universal mind, I'd know who she is. Beyond Dhvani. You understand what I'm trying to say? Many times people come to meet you and you see that they have not come on their own. Somebody has pushed them to come. And that person is no living person. Maybe in their previous life they were with some guru and that guru is pushing them, they come to meet me. Right? So this, when the universal mind opens up, suddenly you see things in a different context over here. Okay, we'll do the meditation. If you are more interested in this, I hope my voice works again in the evening, then we'll talk about it more deeper in the evening. If you have any questions, then just note down those questions, because this is a very deep science of Mr. Tavaria. So we'll go into the, what do you call, questions in the evening. Just now we'll do the meditation, right? And I'll talk. But how come you left this side? You put the statue here and the screen there, no? You have to balance, no? I love to see him every day. He's the best husband there can ever be. He'll come to meet you and I'll say, "Here, have a cup of tea." I'll say, he'll be holding the cup of tea and not drinking it. So I say, "Why are you not drinking?" Okay, my wife's in the room over there. I have to give half to her. Prime husband. Prime husband. Okay, we'll look at the statue. Focus totally on the statue. Allow thoughts of the statue, but no other thought. No other thought. Just verbal thoughts of the statue. What its colors are, whether its shape is beautiful or not. How the colors are reflecting in the light. Now slowly bring in sensitivity and roll your eyes around all the curves in the statue very slowly. And in that, you're not just rolling your eyes, you're sensing the shapes too. There's as if there's an inner feeling, an inner sensitivity of the shapes. Now, as you dissolve into the sensitivity of the shapes, see the words going away because the words are thoughts and they cannot enter the present moment because words are created out of memory. And just allow the picture of the statue with all its colors, with all its beauty, and sense that feeling of the statue. Hold it, the feeling, the statue, the colors. And the deeper you want to go into feeling, roll your eyes around each part of the statue and move into the feeling of it. Now, very slowly, allow the statue to blend in the Akash Tattva around the statue, as if the statue initially you see it, it's disappearing, you see it, it's disappearing, and slowly it blends, it becomes a nothingness. But the colors are still there. And as the statue blends, the colors also start blending. The colors and the reflection of the colors. That feeling that I enjoyed the statue so much, and the statue has vanished into emptiness. Just pure space. You're looking at pure space and nothing else. You can close your eyes at this time also and just look at pure space. Now drop the feeling of enjoyment also. Drop the feeling of enjoyment also. Just the process of seeing and seeing nothing. Attention, when it has no object in front of it, it folds back to the source of attention. Just the emptiness, no thought. And sense who is experiencing this emptiness. Just I am. Now, it is just the feeling of I experiencing this emptiness. And slowly allow the feeling of I to dissolve. Nothingness, pure emptiness. And we'll hold this state, we'll do 1 minute of 3-step rhythmic breathing with this state. Music. So we'll pause over here. We'll meet in the afternoon. We'll do this meditation again, and we'll do the second part of this meditation also. And then I want to teach you how to do 3-step rhythmic breathing in patches with the, what do you call, the tuck tuck of a clock. So we'll practice that also in the evening today. And if there are any questions on what we can take questions also after that. Thank you. All the best.